up you lot, it's me, Propagandist, once again. You are back with a retrospective RWBY Let's Watch. This time we're going on to Chapter 4 of RWBY Volume 1. So, as promised, I'm actually recording this same day as I did the previous two episodes, where we looked at the first 3 chapters of the volume. So, time permitting, we'll have at least time to do Chapter 4. Now, I don't know if necessarily we'll do Chapter 5 as well in this episode. We'll see, it depends on time, because obviously my recording session that I'm having with Phil a bit later is creeping up on me slowly. So if there's time to do it, we'll do it, but I would say probably we will maybe aim at this stage just to do Chapter 4 and all that. So, obviously in this particular episode, our team's going to be in the Emerald Forest, doing their first sort of task for Beacon and all that. So it's very much going to be focused, obviously, on the likes of Ruby and Weiss and their sort of argumentative relationship at this stage, as well as a bit about Pierre and Jean, of course. And I think we'll probably get a bit with Yang and Blake, actually, as well, if I remember correctly, in this one. So, not much really else for me to say by way of an introduction. Keep your Yang jokes coming, by the way, if you've been posting comments with them from my request at the end of the last episode. Because I really need some Yang jokes for those little jump cut moments. Alternatively, if I don't get any, I'll have to just figure out something else. I don't know. It's just one of those humorous little things that I like doing in these RWBY reaction videos, just to jazz up the jump cuts a little bit, make them interesting and all that. Right, let's get to Chapter 4 itself. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Chapter 4, about to get into it. 3, 2, 1, go. So this one, it said 11 minutes 30 then. Oh, sorry, let me just get the volume up there and all that. Oops. Before I forget. So we'll see how long this one goes for, in terms of not just the episode length itself, but also my commentary. Because I can already think of potentially a moment or two that I might pause here. So, like I say, if I have time to do Chapter 5 as well, we will. But then again, the title of the video will have already clued you in terms of what to expect from this one. More tea as usual, Vicar. You see, this is the one issue with having a big recording session, where I do a load of episodes. Obviously, people might have commented on episodes 1 and 2 to say, it's alright, we're fine for you to skip the intro credits. And here's me not doing that.
Hello? Is anyone out there? Hello? I'm getting bored here. Is someone there?
Not really the master of stealth, Yang, but...
Nope. You guys wouldn't happen to have seen a girl in a red hood, would you? You could just say no.
Yeah, I mentioned at the end of the last episode, something interesting, which I'll come back to in a moment.
You couldn't hit the broadside of a... You.
You've done it now.
You monster!
It's a good shot, that. Of Yang just running along, absolutely obliterating that Ursa. Yeah, I'll say it here, actually, what I was just alluding to a moment ago. Because obviously at the end of the last episode we had our first proper view of, of an actual Grimm. Because and that would be, this would be the first time, really, that we've probably seen them in the franchise. Because, the only other time was the Red Trail, and even then, I think I mentioned it there, it feels like, at that point, maybe the producers hadn't quite nailed down the design of the Grimm. Because if you think about the wolves in the Red Trailer, they're sort of, they have that dark colour scheme, much like the Grimm do, but they don't have any of like the sort of white, bony protrusions and things like that. and instead they just have those red glowing eyes. So they're kind of weird. I never really understood whether the creatures in the red trailer were meant to be grim or something else. Or just, you know, if they were just meant to be like wild animals or something. I don't know. Just an interesting observation. 3, 2, 1, resume. Gosh, the sun coming through my window is really beating down on me. I shouldn't be drinking tea.
Remember your training, Weiss.
Just makes me
Head
warmer.
Up, shoulders back, right foot forward. Not that forward. Slow your breathing. Wait for the right time to strike, and now! Gotcha! Hey, watch it! Excuse me, you attacked out of turn. I could have killed you.
We'll comment on this in a moment.
We have to go.
This scene, the argumentation that's about to unfold, this is something to comment on.
That should have been easy. Well, perhaps if you had exercised even the slightest amount of caution with the placement of your strikes, I wouldn't have set the forest on fire. What's that supposed to mean? I'm just surprised that someone that talks so much would communicate so little during an encounter.
Well, I'm sorry that you need my help to win a fight. I'm just fine on my own.
Well,
I'll pause in a moment.
congratulations on being the strongest child to sneak your way into Beacon. Bravo.
Number 1, Ruby, no need to take it out on a tree, but there's a lot actually that's interesting, I think, to unpack in that scene. So obviously there's the bit there where Weiss says you attacked out of turn, and then obviously the bit where she then goes on to say, surprised that someone who talks so much would communicate so little during a battle. And what I always find kind of interesting is when you look at the reactor sort of community, I guess, if you want to call it that, on YouTube, all the different people who've watched Volume 1 and done, you know, Let's Watches like this of it, it's always interesting to see the kind of division within that community in terms of those people who are on Ruby's side in that argument and those people who are on Weiss's side. So I'm, you know, screw it, I'll throw my hat into the ring. I'm kind of on Weiss's side in that argument, and I'm not just saying that because she's my favourite character in Ruby. No, but I think Weiss does raise some interesting points there, and actually not just interesting points, but actually quite valid arguments in the sense of, you know, if you're going to be doing this kind of thing together, you need to be able to communicate, you need to be talking about, you know, how you're going to approach these situations and all that. And it's interesting when you watch sort of some of the reactors who are more on Ruby's side, because they sort of say, what do you mean communicate? What, in the middle of a battle? How are you going to do that? You know, what do you want? Like a full detailed verbal breakdown of everything you're intending to do and that I'm intending to do? That kind of thing. Well, no, that's not what Weiss is necessarily getting at there. It's more that, you know, if you think about real life, for example, I don't know, just off the top of my head, the way in which real life, like police, military, how they work when they're, you know, when the way they're trained to communicate with one another in the middle of an operation, when obviously there might be so much noise and so much happening all at once that, you know, you realistically can't go into detailed verbal communication with one another. Usually they have alternate ways of communicating. So, you know, that could be things like very short, snappy, quick verbal commands like, you know, attack here, go there. And of course, that usually will be a combination of that and things like non-verbal communicative cues. So like hand gestures, for instance, you know, need you over there, or, you know, take down that person, etc. So, you know, when Weiss says communication, she doesn't mean explaining things to the nth degree of detail. She just means something that communicates each other's intent. Because, you know, to use a bit of kind of very business-like work terms, it's about deconfliction and making sure that what one person is doing is coordinating alongside what someone else is doing. Because if you obviously see the scene there, if we sort of play that back, the way it kind of unfolded. So like Weiss kind of, yeah, does this, where it's like she charges up her sword, Mertenaster, whatever it's called, to give it like a sort of a flame effect. And then, obviously, as she's like charging towards one of the Grimm, Ruby then appears right in front of her, having obviously not communicated with Weiss beforehand to find out what Weiss is doing, because obviously Ruby in the previous episode had literally just shot off into the forest ahead of her. And so, of course, Weiss not only runs into Ruby, but also has to like redirect her energy from the blade to ensure that she doesn't basically blow Ruby up. And then, of course, that just causes all kinds of chaos. So, basically, that is the importance of communication, ladies and gentlemen. Deconfliction, that's the key thing. And communication, like I say, doesn't have to be, you know, detailed verbal commands or instructions. It can be just simple combination of short, quick, snappy verbal cues or /hand gestures, just to communicate intent. You know, you will take on this one, you'll take on that one, etc., etc. So yeah, that's why I'm on Weiss's side in that argument. And I think that's interesting because certainly I think as we get into the remainder of this chapter and possibly also chapter 5, that perhaps is something that Ruby as a character has to really kind of learn in this couple of episodes, that hold on, it's not just about you and your moment of glory, you need to work alongside the people around you, so don't try to be a hero, basically, be a team player. Right, 3, 2, 1, resume. Yeah, it was a long ramble, but I just think it's a really interesting scene, that, and there's a lot you can say about it, both in terms of Weiss's character and in terms of Ruby's character as well. Oh, here's a good scene.
Gunfire.
This is where
it seems some of our comrades have encountered
spoiler,
the enemy.
Pyrrha explains aura.
John, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Just a scratch.
Why didn't you activate your aura?
Huh?
Your aura.
Gesundheit.
John, do you know what aura is?
Clearly not.
Of course I do. Do you know what aura is?
Aura is the manifestation of our soul. It bears our burdens and shields our hearts. Have you ever felt like you were being watched without knowing that someone was there?
Yeah.
With practice, our aura can be our shield. Everyone has it, even animals.
What about monsters?
No, the monsters we fight lack a soul. They are creatures of grit. The manifestation of anonymity. They are the darkness, and we are the light.
Right. That's why we fight them.
It's not about why. It's about knowing. Understanding both dark and light helps us manifest our aura. Everyone has some of both.
Understanding both dark and light. Interesting thing to say. What with all the later lore about the gods.
By bearing your soul outward as a force, you can deflect harm. All of our tools and equipment are conduits for aura. You project yourself and your soul when fighting.
No! It's like a force field!
Yes, if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah, really good scene. Fantastic explanation of, well, introduction of the concept of aura. Oof. There's a brutal one.
Now, close your eyes and concentrate.
Okay.
For it is in passing that we achieve immortality. Through this, we become a paragon of virtue and glory to rise above all, infinite in distance and unbound by death. I release your soul, and by my shoulder protect thee.
Pyrrha?
It's all right. I used my aura to unlock yours, but the energy that protects you now is your own. You have a lot of it.
Wow.
So the other thing that's interesting in that explanation is obviously when, you know, Pyrrha mentions there that the Grimm don't have souls, which is interesting, because obviously she says that all creatures, humans, animals, do, but not these things. So in some respects, I guess you could sort of say like the Grimm are not, you know, they have minds, but they don't have souls, so they're kind of like, are they a bit like kind of robots, almost? In a metaphorical sense, that is. Not literally are they robots, but you know what I mean. In a metaphorical sense, they're kind of like robots. They can think, they can problem solve, but they don't have a soul, therefore they don't kind of have any real identity, or almost kind of like consciousness, as if you're thinking of it kind of like as if they're basically a bunch of AIs. You know, they think, they can do, but they don't feel necessarily. So, yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that. Just think it's one of those interesting little things. All right, 3, 2, 1, resume. Boop. Is it boop time?
I still don't think that's what a sloth sounds like.
Our last pair has been formed, sir. Nora Valkyrie and Lai Ren. Poor boy. I can't possibly imagine those two getting along. Still, he's
how little you
better
know,
off than Miss
Glinda.
Nico's. I don't care what his transcripts say. That Jean fellow is not ready for this level of combat. I guess we'll find out soon enough. At their current pace, they should reach the temple within just a few minutes.
Okay, actually, there's something else here
What
that
did
we
you
can
hear
talk
was his
about.
relics this year? Professor Ozpin?
Yeah, so the bit about Jean then, where Glinda is commenting on him, saying, you know, don't care what his transcripts say, he's not ready for this level of combat. It's always kind of interesting when you think about Ozpin and about sort of the, you know, what is like the, how do you say, the kind of the admissions process at Beacon. Clearly you need certain transcripts, presumably from your preceding combat school, to be able to get in. But it's interesting because you think what else would be involved in an admission to Beacon and all that. And I know that obviously within the fandom there's always this kind of there's always been this sort of speculation about Jean and Ozpin, and surely Ozpin would have realised at some point that Jean clearly is not cut out, at least not yet, for this level of combat. And so you think, why did Ozpin therefore let Jean into Beacon exactly? Was there more to what was going on? I feel like there were probably a lot of fan theories possibly back in the day about that. And I know this is sort of something interesting in light of Volume 9 as well, because presumably, you know, at this point Jean and Ozpin have never actually met, you know, they are strangers to one another. And yet I've seen various fan theories, and I don't really know how much stock I place in them, saying that actually one of Ozpin's earlier incarnations may have actually already met Jean and realised that actually, despite being kind of, you know, goofy and not very skilled at this stage, that he is going to become something very, you know, effective as a leader, as a fighter as well. Because some of the fan theories, I've seen some, like I say, I don't know how much stock I place in this, but there are some fan theories, for example, that say that Lewis in Volume 9 may have been an earlier incarnation of Ozpin, potentially. But do we believe that? I'm not entirely sure. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts on that. Like I say, I don't know if I believe that necessarily, or if maybe it's just the case that, you know, actually the explanation is very simple. Jean just managed to pull the wool over the eyes of the administrators of Beacon and thus get in. But, you know, if you accept the Lewis and Ozpin are actually one and the same person theory, then the idea would be that obviously Lewis, being an earlier incarnation of Ozpin, met a later version of Jean, who was a good fighter and a hero. So, hence why, when we get to this stage, where a later version of Ozpin meets an earlier version of Jean. You know. But yeah, it's a wild fan theory, and I don't know if it's true. I don't think it's correct, necessarily. At least, if it is true, we've not really seen, I don't think, really that much evidence to support it. It is just very much, I think, it exists in the realm of hypothesis. But, you know, fan theory. Just thought it would be interesting to put it out there. I'm sure, you know, people probably have their own thoughts on the viability of that as a fan theory and whether they accept it or not. Like I say, I'm not sure I do at this stage, but 3, 2, 1, resume.
It's definitely this way. I mean, this way. It's definitely this way. All right, it's official. We passed it.
Why can't you just admit that you have no idea where we're going?
Because I know exactly where we're going. We're going to the Forest Temple.
Okay, I will just pause again. So I took Weiss's side in the argument earlier. Now's the point where I'll actually take Ruby's side for a moment. Why can't you just admit that you don't know where we're going? That's a life lesson, really, I think, for a lot of people. I think particularly as well for younger people too. Because, you know, have I ever mentioned, I think I've mentioned before here on Propagandist, but, you know, I work in the higher education sector. So, obviously, you know, throughout my career I've encountered a lot of people, students of all ages, you know, young students of, say, like 18, 19 years old, and as well as that, you know, older, mature students as well, who might be in middle age, and coming back to do, say, like, you know, a master's degree for the first time, that kind of thing. And, you know, there's always that interesting sort of life lesson that every so often, you know, you kind of have to impart to people, which is that sometimes in life, it's okay not to know something, and it's okay to admit when you don't know. And in fact, quite often in life, it's better to just admit if you don't know something, rather than trying to, you know, act like you do. So, you know, that's probably one of those things where it's like, it can be sometimes quite a display of kind of emotional maturity to sort of admit, you know, when you don't know something, because in effect you're kind of, a lot of people I think get scared of that because it's like they feel like I'm admitting a deficiency, or I'm admitting that I'm flawed, or that, you know, I'm letting people down, that kind of thing. But actually there's another way of looking at that, which is, you know, you're not necessarily letting people down if you don't have an answer to their question. If anything, you know, you are perhaps ultimately making a contribution to helping them. You're basically saying, you know, I don't want to waste your time. You will need to look somewhere else to find the answer to whatever question you have. So here is the moment where Ruby, I think, displays a good point, a good, valid, mature point. You know, just admit you don't know, and stop wasting my time with this charade as though you do know. All right, 3, 2, 1, resume.
Oh, stop it. You don't know where we are either.
Well, at least I'm not pretending like I know everything.
What is that supposed to mean?
It means you're a big, stupid jerk, and I hate you!
Just keep moving.
Oh, just keep moving. Hurry up. Wow, watch where you're going. Why
No,
are you
admittedly,
so bossy?
Ruby
I'm not bossy.
articulates the point initially, but
Stop
then
treating me like a kid. Stop acting
descends
like a
into
kid.
childish
Stop
name
acting like
calling.
you're perfect.
I'm not perfect.
Probably because, you know, she's got a degree of emotional maturity, but
But I'm
not
still leagues better than you.
enough necessarily to be able to articulate exactly
You don't even know me.
what the problem is. Well, yeah, I take Ruby's side a bit more in that particular aspect of the argument. That look from Blake.
Chess pieces?
Some of them are missing. Looks like we weren't the first ones here.
Well, I guess we should pick one.
Jean?
This is it?
I'm not sure this is it.
Pyrrha, I made the torch. Could you at least humor me for maybe 5 more feet?
There's old jerk-ass Jean again.
Do you feel that?
Soul-crushing regret?
No, it's warm.
How about a cute little pony?
Sure.
I wonder if there is some symbolism here, by
That
the way.
wasn't too hard.
Some symbolism in terms of the pieces that they actually pick up. Because obviously Yang there just picked up one of the knights, because they're all chess pieces. Wonder if that's meant to sort of say something about the characters. Because obviously a knight, I mean, it's been a long, long time actually since I played a chess game. In fact, when did I last play chess? Probably when I was a teenager. And that's a long time ago. But no, obviously the knight in chess is one of those characters that it moves like 2 squares forward, then one square to either side. So it moves basically like in an L shape, in essence. I'm trying to think if there's some kind of symbolism there from that. Or maybe it's just actually much simpler, because, you know, knights, historically, bold warriors. Is that what it's saying about the members of Team RWBY and all that? Because isn't it... Because what pieces do Team Juniper? Which ones do they get? Was it the rooks or was it the bishops? Or was it Team Cardinal that takes the bishops, which actually would track? I don't know. We'll see in due course in the later episodes. All right, 3, 2, 1, resume.
Well, it's not like this place is very difficult to find.
You say that, but...
That's the relic! Hey! Bad relic. Gotcha!
John?
Some girl's in trouble! Blake, did you hear that?
There's a tiny cave opening. How on earth did that scorpion fit in there? That Deathstalker even? Maybe there's another entrance somewhere that it got in through. I don't know, humorous little point. 3, 2, 1, resume.
Do something!
John! Whatever you do, don't let... Go.
Blake, did you hear that? What should we do?
And there we go. Chapter 4, ladies and gentlemen. So, yeah, looking at time, I don't have time to record Chapter 5, unfortunately. So it's just going to have to be that one. But there was plenty to talk about there, ladies and gentlemen. So let's take our jump cut, as usual, at this stage. And we'll have a little chat in a second. Right, ladies and gentlemen. Apologies if I have been progressively looking sweatier and sweatier throughout this episode. Like I say, it's afternoon now, and sun is really streaming through my window. In fact, look at my arm. Look at my arm on the camera. It's like glowing white. That's because of the lighting, because the light hitting it. So I'm progressively getting warmer and warmer. I want to close my blinds in a second. And yeah, as soon as I do, that's going to obviously affect the lighting of the video, so that'll probably be it for the recording session of these Let's Watch bits of content. But yeah, you know, I always think Chapter 4 is an interesting episode of RWBY Volume 1, just given that you've got those interesting character moments between Ruby and Weiss, especially. And, you know, you can definitely see how there's elements of that argument on both sides that are valid. Obviously, Weiss saying, you know, we need to work on communication, particularly during these, you know, encounters and battles. And Ruby then, of course, saying, you know, it's okay to admit when you don't know anything. Well, that's not quite what they said, but that's the point, the points that they're getting at. So yeah, you can definitely take kind of both sides within that. They both have valid points. And yeah, like I say, I think as we get through Chapter 5, Ruby in particular gets a bit of a little bit of development. It's interesting actually because, again, like going back to that thing about, you know, criticisms that have been levied sometimes at RWBY, people have, I always remember, you know, prior to Volume 9, people would often sort of say that RWBY sometimes has never really had character development. And I'm going to be honest with you, that's another criticism that I don't agree with. I don't think that's got a leg to stand on, because sometimes I think the character development isn't necessarily always overt. Sometimes it can be more subtle, and I think obviously what we see in Chapter 5 upcoming next will, you know, sort of speak to that a bit, in terms of, you know, the moments that Ruby has with Weiss, for instance, just based on my memory of what happens. But you know, generally speaking, like, of course Ruby has had character development throughout RWBY. You know, particularly like volumes 4 and 5 and 6. You know, there's tons of development there. characterization and things going on in the background. I think it's just that Ruby's character development compared to other characters is more sort of gradual and takes place over a much longer period of time. And so as a result, you know, it can be easy to sort of compare her to other characters and then come to the opinion that she's not had any, which is not correct at all. It reminds me actually really of one of my favourite characters from the Danganronpa franchise. Sorry, I'm making a comparison, I'm going off some, you know, on a tangent here. But, you know, one of my favourite characters from Danganronpa 2, for instance, is What's-Her-Face, the princess, Sonia Nevermind. And she's another character who I sometimes find people sort of say that, you know, what was her character arc? What did she do in that game, in DR2? And I would say, well, if you're comparing her to other characters, then yeah, it may feel like, you know, she doesn't have any real sort of character arc, or, you know, she maybe doesn't stand out as much. But actually, if you don't compare her to other characters, if you sort of take her on her own merits and look at, you know, what does she actually do in that game, you take a note of every free time event, every character interaction she has, the way she sort of interacts with every scene that she's in, that kind of thing. Actually, you do notice things about the character that are quite stand out. So I think in that respect, there's kind of like a very vague parallel, I guess, in terms of, you know, I feel like I've seen that kind of thing before, where people sometimes say that, oh, you know, this character, they don't do anything, there's no character development. You know, when I say don't do anything, I don't mean they don't do like any, you know, in Ruby's case, combat scenes or anything like that. I mean do anything in terms of character arcs and development, but you know what I mean. So this is a really garbled explanation, but hopefully my point is sort of coming across nonetheless. But indeed, you know, Ruby's very much a character who, you know, that criticism that sometimes she doesn't really get character development, I don't agree with that. I do think there are some notable moments, even very sort of like subtle ones that you can easily miss. They do happen, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, that of course is the big standout thing really of that episode, and as well as that, obviously, the explanation of aura, I think is, I think that's a scene that throughout the fandom is widely regarded as just being really, really good because of the way it plays out. You know, you've got Pyrrha's explanation, and then you have the fight scene with Ren in the background. Yeah, so all around pretty good scene and all that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think I'm going to wrap this episode up here at this point because I'm just looking at my camera feed. You notice me sort of just looking down quite frequently there. It's because I think the lighting's getting a bit awkward. It's like one side of my face on this side is getting darker and darker. Probably because, you know, sun is sort of moving across through the sky, and as a result the angle of the lighting's getting a bit weird. So yeah, in that case, ladies and gentlemen, I think we'll start to wrap up here then. So I hope you enjoyed that, and hope you'll join me for episode, chapter 5 rather, when I get around to that. Like I say, this was all done as one big recording session, chapters 2 through to, chapters 1, through to 4 in one recording session, which is pretty good. Yeah, so looking forward to continuing on with the retrospective Let's Watch and all that. So, as usual, you know, Propagandist is my second channel. My main channel is General Red Strategist, where I do a lot of gaming content, if you're interested in that kind of thing. Other than that, you know, if you enjoyed, do join me for the next time, where the saga of Ruby and Weiss's complicated relationship will continue. But other than that, I'm going to sign off now. Goodbye, everybody.